Welcome everyone to Mary Giuliani Live. I am so glad you guys are here tonight. We've got Andy Fetzner in the studio live tonight, and she's going to be talking all about the ACEs survey and how you can identify what your ACEs score is, which is an acronym for Adverse Childhood Experiences, and really learn how to heal and to build resilience. And so before we get into bringing Andy on, though, I just have a couple of announcements. For those of you that are new, the whole purpose of Mary Giuliani Live is to support you in really being inspired and going for your dreams and by watching other people that are doing it. And that's really what got me going on my journey 30 years ago, was watching a lot of Oprah shows and reading a lot of books and really watching other people taking risks and stepping outside of their comfort zone. So that's why I'm doing this show, and I'd love it if you could be able to see the replays and stuff like that. So be sure you get up on my email list, because I send out a link to the replays every single week, as well as announcements of new shows coming up. So how you get on my email list is you just go right up to Mary Giuliani, oops, wrong side, marygiuliani.net, get show updates, and just put your name and email address in, and we'll send you an email once a week. And then also, if you're an iTunes person, I do have an iTunes channel. So just go to iTunes and put in Mary Giuliani Live, and you'll get it downloaded into your iPhone every single week. So make sure you do that. The other cool thing about a live stream show is that we can actually field questions in real time. So make sure that if you would like to ask Andy or me questions, that you type those right into the chat right below the Facebook feed. Or if you just want to make comments, this is a really important topic, and I'm so grateful that I found out about it, because it's made a huge difference in the quality of my life already in just like the last 6 months. So with that, I want to let you know about Andy. Andy Fetzner is an educator, therapist, and leader in the Los Angeles and Arizona Resilient Social Justice Movement. She is the community manager of the ACEs Connection for the Los Angeles and Arizona communities, and is also the co-chair of the Trauma Informed Task Force of LA. She trains organizations and individuals at Origins Training, and is a teen therapist at in Malibu at Roots and Wings. And her whole goal is to inspire compassion and connection within communities through educating on trauma-informed and resilience practices. She's a therapist that specializes in working with children and families. So with that, let's bring on Andy. Welcome, Andy.
Hi, Mary. So good to be here.
So good to see you.
Oh, of course.
All right. So great. Well, it's so happy. It's so cool to have you live in the studio instead of just dialing in or because it's just so nice to have a real live connection with our whole technology. It's so unusual sometimes to actually have somebody sitting next to you. You can actually touch them and everything. Yeah. So I always like to start with what got you involved with this whole community and like ACEs and trauma-informed care and that sort of thing.
This is something that I think about quite a bit.
Why don't you scoot in a little bit?
Sure. So I have kind of a long story, but we're going to go long story short for the purposes of today.
Okay.
It was kind of like an aha moment for me, and it was at the end of my master's degree program. So I'm going to school. I'm learning all about health and mental health and how to be a therapist.
Yeah.
And I decided to sign up for a training called Introduction to Trauma-Informed Practices.
Uh-oh.
Yes. And I had personal interest in this because I had personal experience with EMDR therapy.
Yeah.
And professional training in EMDR since, I had my own experience personally. And so I went into this training, and the presenter was talking about the Adverse Childhood Experiences study. And he was talking about these experiences affect outcomes in life, and I thought, okay, well, that's kind of obvious, like Freudian even. Childhood affects adulthood.
Yeah.
But then he went on, and he started talking about statistics on suicide and health outcomes, and
oh my God.
And that blew my mind.
Yeah.
He said that the symptoms that we often diagnose as disorders are indicated or are because of these experiences in childhood.
Yeah.
So that made me want to learn more and more and more and more and more.
Right.
And I nerded out for I was audited a class even though I was done with school.
Yeah.
And I just kept learning, and I started a training company since then to just shout this from the rooftops.
Wow. Well,
long story short.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of not similar, but just when I found out about the impact of this study, it really blew my mind. And given, my childhood history as well. So, would you just give us an overview of the ACEs study?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. It's really important, I think, to understand the different components of the ACEs science. Mm-hmm. We've talked about that offline a little bit. Mm-hmm. There's the Adverse Childhood Experience study, of course, mm-hmm. that looks at abuse, neglect, general household dysfunction. It's 10 questions. It's a survey. Mm-hmm. And it's been modified since its original since it was originally done by Dr. Vincent Folletti and Dr. Robert Anda. Mm-hmm. It was mostly done, the study was mostly done on middle-class white Americans who had health insurance. Yeah. So there are obviously some limitations to it and expansions to it, but the findings were so stark and in making that scientific connection between mm-hmm. adversity and stress in childhood and negative health outcomes in adulthood. Right. The findings, like I mentioned, looked at not only mental health outcomes, but also it looked at the suicidality. It looked at ischemic heart disease, cancer. You're 2 times as likely to have cancer if you have 4 or more adverse childhood experiences in as an adult. Right. You're 1.6% more likely to have diabetes. Wow. If you have 4 or more ACEs. And then so that's kind of the foundational study. Right. The next part, which is broader, it's kind of zooming out, right? Right. Looks at adverse community experiences mm-hmm. and environments, because the ACE study found stress causes outcomes. Yes. And individual experiences are not the only thing that cause stress. Right. And so when we have communities that are stressed, that mm-hmm. don't have their basic needs met of housing or employment or economic mm-hmm. food access, those types of green space. Right. The outcomes of the community are also going to create negative outcomes. Right. Or the situation, the environment of the community. So we look at social, historic, and systemic trauma, mm-hmm. encompassing that adverse community experiences mm-hmm. over generations. Wow. We talk about epigenetics. Right. We don't have to nerd out on that today. But that's a whole nother topic. Well, and just so that it doesn't freak people out too much, because I know at first when I heard about this study, it like kind of freaked me out. It's like, I don't even think I want to know about this. Right. It's like, I don't want to worry about getting sick or whatever. And so would you mind, before we get into the stuff, letting people understand that they may have already been preventing these things? Absolutely. Or how they can prevent these things? Why isn't everybody then moving into this, they have heart disease and cancer? Right. Because we all have adversity that happens to us. Right. What are the protective factors? That's the next most important thing. So the next thing that we talk about is the body and the brain and how that gets calibrated. Right. Well, if we have this adversity happening in our communities mm-hmm. or in our families or our upbringing, mm-hmm. when we have connections in our community, caregivers who are present for us, we have solid mm-hmm. attachment, we can trust mm-hmm. that they're going to be there mm-hmm. if we need them. It doesn't always have to be a primary caregiver, mm-hmm. but it's helpful if it is. Yeah. That might be why, if you've had adversity. Right. And you maybe don't have these health outcomes. And that's why in adulthood, we have our brains that can rewire to kind of overcome that rocky foundation that maybe was established. Right. So body and brain does get calibrated when we're young. Right. But the cool thing is, it's plastic. We can rewire. Right. And the last thing is understanding resilience and relationships and how does that look.
Right.
It's really understanding the effects of stress. And
Right.
how can we just moderate them
Absolutely.
through relationships?
Well, good. And I think that's what I want to start with so that people don't feel like, oh my God, I'm screwed. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's big stuff.
And I would imagine the reason, and this is at least there's so many dire things that can happen, is because a lot of people that are raised in really crazy drug or alcohol or mental illness or all those different things that can happen as a child that don't get into a healing path end up becoming alcoholic or addicted or extremely overweight or whatever, which was my path until like 25 years ago, actually. I was all of those things. But for people that don't get on that healing path, that's probably why those numbers are so drastic.
Right.
And
they're doing what they can. We as
Right.
humans, it's really all of us. This is not a them thing.
Right.
We as humans, when we're in pain, we don't want to feel that pain.
Right.
And when we have lots of hard experiences and adversity, shrinks our ability to put up with stuff.
Yeah.
We call it our window of tolerance.
Yeah.
And anything can throw us over the edge, and we don't want to feel that pain, so we
Right.
eat, we have sex, we shop. We gamble.
we exercise,
We work. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We use substances to just not feel it and just keep ourselves busy.
Exactly.
We play on our phones.
Yeah.
We do whatever it takes
to not be present to the pain.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the one important thing that, I think is really important for your listeners, and part of my mission is this is not a those people thing that means you're crazy or you're broken or whatever.
Right.
This is exactly the right way to respond when you've had lots of stress in your life.
Right. Absolutely.
It's like the way our bodies are wired up.
Right.
It's your body's doing your job. We almost want to say, thanks, body,
Yeah.
for making sure I can survive in these moments, even though it's kind of annoying and it's
Right.
not a helpful pattern.
Right.
We know we can pattern ourselves to keep ourselves safe.
Absolutely.
So it's breaking those patterns like you're talking about, Mary, like you've done.
Right.
Over the last 25 years, you were inspired and uplifted.
Right.
And now you've repatterned and you're continuing
Completely.
that journey.
And now I'm
Absolutely.
out there trying to help other people do the same thing.
Exactly.
So I'm being part of the well, see, it's interesting. I almost said I'm being part of the solution instead of part of the problem, but actually I just caught myself because the old blame myself part of the problem. I was never part of the problem. I was just responding in a sane way that anybody would respond to a crazy environment.
Exactly.
So, so I'm just curious for you, what was because we're going to actually go through how to take the ACEs survey.
Okay.
But before we do, I thought it would be important to ask you, what was your experience when you first took the survey? How was that for you?
It was like, oh, okay. That's
No
why,
wonder.
That's why I did that. That's why I have my heart racing, and I really connected to the body stuff.
Yeah.
The symptoms and the body stuff.
Yeah.
That really resonated with me because I was an athlete in college.
Right.
And I was attuned to my body, but I didn't get it.
Yeah.
I didn't know I was such an adrenaline junkie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when I took the survey, I was like, oh, people who have high ACEs do these things.
Yeah.
And that means that I'm just keeping myself safe.
Right.
But I'm not in danger anymore, so crap.
Yeah, right.
I'm really good at keeping myself safe, but there's not a bear chasing me.
Right.
Like
Okay.
Nadine Burke-Harris
Yes.
says.
Yes.
She says that we get used to running away from the bear when the bear's chasing us. And we should run away from the bear, but when the bear's not chasing us anymore,
Yeah.
we're still running. Uh-oh.
Right. Exactly. Well, I know for me, when I first took the survey, I think I was really anxious, which is one of my things, part of having a hyper aroused brain from being in flight or fight. It was almost like, okay, is this gonna determine some horrible thing?
Right.
You know what I mean?
My fate.
Yeah, yeah.
Is this my destiny?
Yeah, because when you look at all these different statistics, it's but once I took the survey, I realized and did the research. I realized that, oh my God, I've been building my resilience all along, and the thing though that I hadn't dealt with, because I didn't realize that part of what happens for some people, I know not everybody, that are raised in really stressful, unpredictable, chaotic stress, which was my life for 15 years growing up in my family, you can develop like a form of PTSD.
Right.
And even though they don't recognize it in the DSM, it's known as complex PTSD or developmental trauma, right?
Right.
And I didn't realize that for me, that was that's why I'm like this. Oh, that's why I started soothing myself with food when I was 5 years old.
Right.
Oh, that's why I sucked my thumb until I was in kindergarten. Oh, that's why I started doing drugs and alcohol when I was 16 and smoking cigarettes and
Right. Of course I did that.
Because I had a hyper-aroused brain, and also the thing that I learned about being raised in a really crazy environment is that your brain doesn't develop because you're a child. So your brain, the portions of your brain that help you focus and create, impulse control, did not develop well. And so it helped me feel like compassion for myself, even though I'd been working on that. It was so nice to see the science, because our culture tells us if you can't control your food, your alcohol, your drugs, whatever, you're weak and you're a loser. I hate to say, that's the message I got at least.
There's shame attached to it.
And so I just thought that there was just something wrong with me, which was very shameful. And so it's so nice to realize that we come by this honestly.
Right. Absolutely.
So anyway, so as far as taking the actual test, why don't we go ahead and just go through that?
Right.
And so for the viewers that are live, or if you're watching the replay, if you just go right up to my website, MaryGiuliani.net, and it says Adverse Childhood Experiences Study or Survey. And there's the study right there, and it's 10 questions, and you just go through and answer, yes or no, really, basically. And one of the things I thought would be helpful for visitors to, look at on this survey, I just want to cover a couple of things. Like, for example, the first question, did a parent or another adult in your household often swear at you, insult you, put you down, or humiliate you? When I first took this survey, I didn't answer yes to this, but then I realized, wait a minute, my mom shamed me all the time. That's humiliate.
Right.
So I went back, and it's like, okay, there's one for me.
Right.
And then the other thing is, did a parent or the one where, wait a second. Was your mother or stepmother push grabbed, basically physically abused? Right. Well, my mom wasn't, but my mom would slap my dad all the time.
That's some of the limitations of this. And that's
so
important.
I don't know if that would count as an ACE or not.
Well, this is the whole point of this survey. It's a survey. It's not valid. It's not a validated, it had some great findings. There are lots of limitations to it. It doesn't look at violence within a community. There have been subsequent studies, absolutely, or being gay, or being or being like excluded from your family, did you have an illness or like a health illness?
So this is just sort of a bare bones.
It's a beginning point. Right. It's looking at, and it's really your own perception of your experience. Right. And that's the important thing too. I think that sometimes we want to create this linear path of this equals this. Yes. Even when you go down and scroll down on Mary's site, you'll see the resilience survey, which is 12 questions. Yes. Which is so annoying for people because they're like, but I need it to match. Yeah. And we want to create this simplicity. But it's really looking at themes. Right. Was I really stressed out as a kid? Yeah. And if I was, then maybe I could look and see why I got to where I'm at today, and wherever that lies on the spectrum of being a human, it can create some context. Absolutely. So that we don't come at ourselves from such a place of judgment. Right.
Well, thank you. And I'm so glad you mentioned that. So for the people that are watching, or the replay watchers, viewers, on my website, the MaryGiuliani.net, the Adverse Childhood Experiences tab, there's the 10-question survey for the ACE survey, but right below that, there's the 12-question resilience survey. Right. So it will help you understand why you were or weren't able to
Right.
deal with the toxic stress. And what's so interesting to me too about the ACEs study is it took me a while to dig into like understanding it, but what's so interesting about it is it's the toxic stress.
It's the toxic
I mean, that's one
stress,
piece of
yeah.
it. There's also the identity issues that
Right.
happen. But could you speak more about
Sure.
why is it so toxically stressful? And what happens to a body when it's a person when they're exposed to that kind of toxic stress?
Right.
And maybe you could draw the distinction between healthy stress,
Sure.
moderate,
Absolutely.
toxic.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is another one of those aha things because there's a woman, her name is Kelly McGonigal, and she has a great TED Talk. She talks about stress isn't bad. We need it to survive. It wakes us up in the morning. It helps us get that paper done that we need done or the report done that needs to get done.
Yeah.
We absolutely need it. And when it gets to a point where it exists in us, and it doesn't need to be, then that's not healthy and that's not helping us. It becomes toxic. So tolerable stress is when something bad happens. Maybe there's a death, maybe there's even a natural disaster. If you have like a solid group of family, friends, you have cultural traditions that help you navigate through this distress, there's predictability. If basic needs are met, all of these things help with stress not becoming toxic. But when
So they are buffers.
They're buffers.
Like, I mean, I
exactly.
remember Dana saying that just having one adult that can be there empathetically for you as a child, even if it's not part of your family, like a coach or a teacher, can make all the difference in the world.
And I've been reading research lately talking about other protective factors, especially in teens and group home type environments, or so kids who are kept in their sibling group, that's a protective factor. When they're
When they go to foster care, I would imagine.
Absolutely. Or kids who navigate through the different treatment centers together. That peer-to-peer is just as, if not more, helpful than a caring adult. This is like 2016 research. So it's like now that we've started the conversation, we're asking different questions.
Right.
And we're looking at, okay, if it's okay that we're having stressful times, how can we get in there quick and do that healing?
Yeah.
And how can we create infrastructure that supports healing?
And this isn't just for kids and teens, but for adults too.
Absolutely.
So even though, I think I want to address the issue of, so even though this happened, 45 years ago, the whole fight-flight thing of being raised in that toxic environment, it keeps your brain stuck in that mode.
Yeah, brain and body.
Yeah.
Right? Your whole nervous system.
And I didn't even know that until 6 months ago. And this is the other thing I just want to touch on really quickly, that really, when I learned about it, part of me was like, oh my God, no wonder. But another part of me was so pissed off.
Right.
Like, what? I have been sniffing around personal growth for 30 years, and not one therapist, not one mental health practitioner, not one doctor, anyone ever said, Mary, you know what? Given what you've shared about with your challenges, maybe you have complex trauma or developmental trauma, because I didn't have sexual or physical abuse. I had severe emotional neglect and abuse. And our culture doesn't acknowledge that as much. Right. And so here I've been running around with a brain that has been traumatized, and then I find out after reading Bessel van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps the Score, that you cannot heal trauma, PTSD, childhood PTSD, with talk therapy. So I'm like, oh, great. So whatever I've been doing, yes, it's been helping, but it didn't really heal my brain. And that's why I recently started getting into all these different things, and they've been really helping. And we'll go into that. But I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Absolutely. That's such there's so many components to this. And when we look at the foundational part of how can we just recognize that we're whole beings, from our brain to our body, and that we have context to our existence, then we can gain control by letting go of control. Paradoxes are for days, right?
Yeah, totally. Well, let's see, what else I wanted to cover. Okay, so we got 5 more minutes because I want to cover the healing part, but I just want to address some of the main. When Bessel van der Kolk, he kind of summed it up in 3 main areas that happen to traumatized kids' brains. He talked about that we have difficulty in focusing, which has been challenging for me, especially creative projects. You know, I can react and do something that's going to happen quickly, but tell me to write a book,
Right.
Yeah, or create something like from nothing. And I've done it, but it's been really hard. But that's because my brain was compromised when I was a young child. The other thing he talks about is that we have difficulty in relationships because what my impression was is that when we're raised in such chaotic environments, relationships don't feel safe to us.
Right. Exactly.
And then what was the third thing? And then what was the third? What is it? It's relationships. Oh, and then the hyper focus and and we're stressed out and
the compulsivity and
and impulsivity. But the other thing is that we get depressed or anxious because our brain is in hyper focus.
It goes up and it goes down.
Yeah, and it's like
it looks like bipolar, which is why the developmental trauma proposal that he put forth is so important for, I think, anybody who has a diagnosis, whether it's sleep or mood or otherwise, really learn more about this stuff so that we can all come at understanding ourselves as humans from a more comprehensive way.
Exactly. Yeah, because I've been given all these different diagnoses, and the reality is I'm not a diagnosis. I had a childhood. That's what happened.
Yeah, you sure did.
We all had childhoods, and sometimes our childhood injures us on an emotional and on a physical and a mind level.
If I can just say, I think one way to think about this stuff is that when you're growing up, you're essentially building a foundation of how to navigate the world. And when you have a solid foundation, you can walk all around it, you can explore, you can invite other people to come onto your foundation with you, and you can hang out.
Right.
But when the foundation is rocky, and then you try and navigate through life, you're going to be impulsive, jumping from the crumbling piece to the crumbling piece. You're not going to want to invite people up. You're going to do whatever you can to escape from that chaos.
Right.
And it's a lot to do with attachment.
Right.
And trust.
Yes.
And in our adulthood, we have to go through the walk of, recreating, like, okay, well, what is it to be trusting in a relationship?
Yeah.
I know what it doesn't look like.
Here's the template that I got downloaded from my mother's brain.
This is not what it looks like. This is not what it's supposed to look like. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And so, emotional regulation, I think that was the third thing Bessel talked about.
That's the up and down. So
so instead of people that don't have trauma from childhood, their emotions, like if they get upset, it's like they might be upset for the afternoon.
Right.
But sometimes people that have this trauma, it takes the whole weekend.
Right. And that's that window of tolerance I was talking about.
Yeah.
So, like, the window of tolerance is really small for those of us who have high ACE scores and not a lot of protective factors in place. And then when when somebody like challenges that and puts even like a little inkling of stress, because stress is cumulative. That is the findings of.
So it builds up.
It builds
unless it
up.
Discharges.
Exactly. It's like you want to titrate the stress.
Okay.
Like drop in, drop out. But when that's not happening,
right,
because there's not somebody else to help you hold that, it's like filling up the cup. Then you're gonna go outside of it, and you're gonna either fight and flight, or you're going to freeze.
Right.
And one important thing when we talk about experiences like a shooting, like those types of things that are going on today.
That horrible shooting in Florida.
Absolutely. We often hear about how the people were quiet and they didn't say anything. This kid was excluded, right? And so he was put outside. You're not one of us.
Right.
Then the shutdown, the compliance happens.
Right.
And like, okay, I won't say anything. That's really dangerous, because then the only place to go from there is up into fight and flight. And then it's not, you're not
You go
getting
on
inside that window
a
of
maniacal,
tolerance. You're not thinking.
Rampage.
There's not choices being made. It's reactivity, like we're talking about, that
Right.
we're really good at, which is helpful if you want to be a first responder, or you want to work in a hospital.
Which we tend to be drawn to.
Right, absolutely. That's another thing that the findings were that people who have who are in the social work field tend to have higher ACEs. I wrote down a statistic.
Well, it's like you have limbic resonance.
Yes, oh my gosh. 54% of service providers have an ACE score of 2 or more.
Yeah.
And then 16% have 4 or more, which is in line with the original ACE study.
Okay.
So it's really interesting when we talk about like the window of tolerance. We want to learn to live in it.
Yeah.
And understand what it is.
Right.
And then we want to expand it.
Right.
I think when we move into the what doesn't help
Right.
is when we challenge ourselves too much, or when then we go into a shame spiral.
Yeah.
And then we give up and we freeze.
Right.
And then we go and we try again.
Right.
It can get really messy, right?
Right.
So the way we can move into that healing process is first awareness about
Right.
this stuff. Awareness about the body and brain, adverse community experiences, adverse trauma, childhood experiences, and the body and brain, like, and resilience, all those 4 things. That's
Cool.
4.
Yes.
And then from that awareness, then we can start to expand the window of tolerance.
Yes.
And we find maybe we can put up with stuff more in one situation.
Right.
And we're like, oh, maybe I'll bring Mary along with me to this meeting.
Yeah.
And then I'll have a protective factor with me, because I do better when I have a coworker. And I don't go into a shame spiral, because I know that's what works for me.
Right. Awesome. By the way, for the people that are watching live, feel free to ask questions, make comments. This is an opportunity to, Andy is an expert in this field, and so if you have any questions for Andy, feel free to just punch them right in. Let's see, what else did I want to cover? We talked about the toxic stress and relationship issues. ACEs and addictions. It's a high correlation.
Right.
In fact, one of the things, Gabor Mate,
Right.
love him.
Yeah. He's amazing.
He wrote a book called In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, and he was the first person I'd ever seen share about how addiction is a trauma response, and that anybody that was raised in a really toxic environment, that's what a lot of what we do to survive,
Right.
the pain. It's an avoidance thing. And so that's why I started using food when I was 5 years old. And so could you share a little bit more about that, and
Sure.
just how common it is, and
Yeah,
maybe even how common ACEs are? Really, why don't you share?
Sure,
Because
absolutely.
a lot of people don't realize, they think they're the only one.
Right, and that's part of the beauty of this, is when we start talking about things, then we can recognize that we're not in this alone.
Right.
And these statistics show that people, women especially, if you have one ACE, then you have an 87% chance of having 2 or more ACEs, and a 50% chance of having 3 or more ACEs.
Right.
And women are 2 times as likely as men to have an ACE score of 5 or more.
I noticed that. And that's so sad.
Right.
But it makes sense given the way women are treated in our
Right.
culture.
And it has to do, it's a worldwide issue, right?
Right.
And luckily with the Me Too movement, that we're
the
not,
Time's Up, yeah.
we're not just addressing the adverse childhood experience. We're looking at it on a community level.
Right.
Which is where that resilience solution lies.
Right.
So when we're talking about addiction, we're talking about people in pain, numbing their pain.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a yes and, the idea that people can just stop, just stop smoking, just stop doing it. Well,
Yeah, like diet and exercise. What a
Right,
great idea.
Right. Well, and Dr. Folletti, when he said, when we start to look at behaviors as a solution,
Yes.
then we can really start to help people find different solutions.
Yeah.
And,
Totally.
And that's really when we talk about addiction, we're talking about what problem are you solving with this?
Right.
And even though the behavior, whatever it may be, wherever it falls on that spectrum, whether it's process or substance, even whatever that behavior is, when we look at it as a solution, then we can kind of replace. We can connect with others about it and talk about it, and
not feel the shame, because there's so much. That's another thing I really want to advocate for people that have struggled with addictions. Yeah. There's so much shame and stigma and secrecy around addiction in our culture that's why only 1 in 10 people get treatment. I mean, if you come out as an alcoholic or somebody that has an addiction, you risk losing your job, your relationship, and what I love what you just shared is that when we can look at addictions as a solution that we've been trying to solve a problem with, and that's how we adapted as children, and what gets in the way of getting into recovery or getting into healing is that this whole message of you just need to buck it up and be strong,
pull up your bootstraps,
and then the reality is if you have a hyper aroused brain, you're going to have a hard time not wanting to calm that brain down. Yeah. And so
needing to.
Needing.
To want, because that implies that there's some sort of like moral association with it. It's a need. It's medication. It's taking your meds. Legal or not.
Exactly. Thank you. And so just recently, actually about 4 months ago, I got into using neurofeedback, and oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, just little things I noticed, like when I would just maybe grab something to eat when I wasn't really hungry. I'm telling you, my impulse control is like so much better. It's like I can actually go, oh, you know what? I don't think that's going to be a good choice for me. Whoa, did I really just say that?
Did I just choose my choice?
I mean, so to actually witness getting your brain to rewire in the way it was supposed to from the beginning makes you realize that it was never my fault. I was born in an environment that was really toxic and stressful, and it's not even my parents' fault. They were born in crazy environments too. It's no one's fault, but there is accountability.
Yeah, and it is, once we have this awareness, it's our responsibility and accountability to give compassion to others who might be going through this, and recognize, and we can be that person who says, you must be experiencing a lot of pain. How are you? Let's talk about what happened to you instead of what's wrong with you, which is another reframe of the trauma-informed and resilience movement. We talk about making that shift.
It's so cool. It's so compassionate.
And then moving towards what's right with you. When we talk about resilience, let's focus on what's right with you. And how are you creating these solutions for yourself?
So let's talk about how we can heal this. So for adults, because everybody that's watching right now is an adult, I would imagine. So like, I mean, I know one of the things I just want to put out there is to make sure that whoever you see, that they're trauma informed, because a lot of people, even therapists, aren't like I said, I was in therapy for many years and with different therapists, and not one of them ever mentioned the word trauma. And it would have saved me a lot of pain and suffering. And so I just want to say that when talk therapy is a very healing, but it has limitations. Absolutely. You know what I mean? Yeah. So could you share, like, what can people do to heal, like, their trauma or their ACEs?
Sure. So I think the first part that I advocate and scream from the rooftops is educating and awareness. People don't like that because I do trainings and they say, well, tell me what to do. And this whole trauma-informed thing is really, it's not what you're doing, it's how you're being.
Well, actually, why don't you define trauma-informed?
Trauma-informed. Trauma-informed is recognizing that our life experiences affect our behaviors and our behavioral and our health outcomes today.
Okay.
So it's just recognizing that connection.
Versus moralizing or judging.
Versus moralizing, judging, versus assuming that people are choosing a choice of being bad or good. It's that judgment versus understanding.
Because 50%, just really quick, 50% of the population thinks that people that have addictions are making a moral choice.
Right, absolutely. That's still present today. And so when we recognize brain science, we recognize those 4 pieces, then we can recognize, oh, okay, there are moments for myself when, anybody who's a parent has had those moments where they've said the thing that they said, you said you'd never say that thing, and then you said it, and you're like, that's a moment where you're in such distress that you do something. Did you choose that choice? Did you choose that choice? Or was that something that, and imagine being in that state more often than not. And so when we can make that shift in paradigm of understanding, there are some people in the world who are operating on that 24/7. How exhausting that must be. And adults or kids. And yes, we can survive and kind of thrive a little bit if we put ourselves in the right positions. Like I think we talked about first responders or working in a chaotic environment. You're really good at it.
Because that's what you lived your whole time.
That's what you lived your whole life. Because those pathways are on point.
Right.
But when we're talking about building resilience and moving away from that shame and blame of our own selves and the punitiveness of our own selves, because I'll tell you how many times I'm like, oh, if I do yoga 3 times this week, I'm going to reward myself with a new yoga pants. That does not work. It does not work.
Yeah.
It's the behavioral stuff by itself doesn't work. Even when we do it with ourselves, there's something keeping us from that, from doing the thing. And it's not until we address the underlying core issue that we are going to actually find sustainable change and solutions.
Okay.
So that's what trauma-informed is. Coming at perceived problems or wants for change with a more comprehensive approach and understanding that our behavior is solving a problem. It's not something we're necessarily consciously choosing.
Yes, thank you. That's very good.
Thorough, sorry.
No, that's okay. So let's talk about the different modalities that people can do. I know for me, I use neurofeedback, which has been fabulous. I also am in a gentle yoga stretch class. I love it.
Yeah.
And before, when I did yoga, it kicked my butt so much I wouldn't go back. So then I went to this massage therapist, and he's like, Mary, just try a gentle stretch yoga class. And I'm telling you, this is the greatest class. And it's really helping me get in touch with my breathing and and somatic mindfulness. And so that's been really helpful.
Yeah.
What else?
I have to say, if I could say one thing, and people don't like this either, but here it is, guys. The one thing is mindfulness. And that's mindful eating. It's mindful driving.
Yeah.
It's mindfully petting your dog. It's mindfully locking your car door.
Yeah.
How many times I'm like, did I lock my car? It's just
just being present, because it makes you present and in touch with your body.
It makes you present in this moment.
Yeah.
Because what trauma is disconnection.
Yeah.
So when we can connect to this moment.
Yes.
And connect to the voice that you're hearing, even though it's kind of raspy because I got a little bit of a cold going on. But slowing down and listening to our voices and looking in people in the eye and mindfully smelling smells. That's such a simple thing, but that's the beginning of it.
Yeah.
Because then we're not living in the past. We're not living for the future. We're not worried about what happened or what's going to happen. We're focusing on this moment right now. And that doesn't mean we're not moving with intention by any stretch. It just means that we're grounded in our current state. And it helps with memory, and it helps with being able to connect. That's kind of a natural neurofeedback. You're connecting your thinking brain because you're saying, what am I experiencing? You're starting to encode memory in this moment instead of worrying and having those stress hormones released. So that's my number one.
Okay, awesome.
It's simple, and you don't have to pay for it.
Yeah, so good. I love it. Well, the other thing I think is really important that's helped me is I walk every day for 30, 40 minutes. And I put on my, the first part of my walk, I just allow myself to connect with nature and feel myself in my body, feel my steps and my feet as they're moving, and just really try to really have the intention of feeling my body and feeling the wind on my face and the sun in my face and the trees, and I would call them it's like, hi plant family, and,
absolutely.
I'm totally into it.
We're all connected.
And then I usually have some really good audible book that I'm listening to that's really inspiring me. So that helps me be embodied.
Right.
Because that's the thing, is we shut our bodies down.
We shut our bodies down. When we know, one thing it's funny, so I've worked with teens quite a bit, and so when I'm working with teens, you can't do therapy, you have to kind of like around the bush. So I was going on kind of a trip with one of my friend's daughters who was going through a hard time. And we were walking, in the metro, going up the stairs, and I was like, walk with your knees, like lift your knees up when you're going up the stairs. Okay, now lift your feet up. Now lift your hips. And that's embodiment.
Yeah.
You're just kind of like getting in your body and like tricking ourselves to do it. But feeling our bodies and feeling our pants as we sit here, or this,
or your feet on the floor. And it's like, because what I found is, I didn't realize this until I started really doing mindfulness and somatic mindfulness, is you can't be in the past or the future when you're feeling your body right now.
Exactly.
You can't
and it's safe, and it's in the breathing too.
Yeah,
I have
breathing.
a kid that I work with. He really loves tofu soup. It's like his favorite thing to eat. So I'm like, okay. He does this thing where he like amps himself up, and I'm like, I think I need to eat some tofu soup. So he'll smell it, and then blow on it because it's really hot. And so those little things that like breathing, and I watch his muscles relax. Mine too. It's great because we're connecting.
We regulate each other, right?
We regulate one another, and it's hard to do when he's amping himself up. I'm sure with kids and with coworkers, or in the community when you're out and about, or when you see something on TV and everybody's all amped up. Those are perfect moments for practice.
Perfect. Yes. Well, another thing that's really helped me is, I used to watch the MSNBC Rachel Maddow show every Monday through Friday. I love Rachel. She's fabulous. And it activated my flight fight. Because if you watch the news these days, you're going to be freaked out because it's traumatizing. What they say, what bleeds leads, and and all the drama with the presidency and everything. And so I stopped watching the news, and actually right after the election, because I couldn't take it anymore, actually. It wasn't because it was like, I'm going to stop watching the news. It was like, it was so darn painful, I couldn't take it.
Absolutely.
But it was the best thing I ever did. That's the thing that Trump has been the best gift for me, is I couldn't take watching the news anymore because of him. And it helped me launch my show and focus on stuff that I can do to help heal and help other people heal. So.
Joe Biden memes did it for me. The Joe Biden memes where him and Obama were like joking around. So humor. That's what got me over. I'm like, okay, I can do this. We can do this, guys. Okay. We can do this, America. Humor. I love it. Great. I mean, going to laugh. That's therapeutic.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And it's not necessarily escaping. Just being in it and just enjoying.
Lighten up.
Those pathways. Building those pathways of laughter. Celebrating. I have to tell you, I didn't just share a lot about my like personal journey, but
feel free if you want.
But when I think about things that have been therapeutic for me, I'm in a relationship now where we celebrate. We celebrate, jokingly, but celebrate nonetheless, taking out the trash. We celebrate, like, thank you, I appreciate you. Yay, it's another day. Yay, we have this amazing opportunity to be by the beach. Like, just celebrating things instead of always looking for, like, it could be better.
Right.
Oh, we got a 4-star hotel, not a 5-star. We're here. We're present. We're healthy.
Yes.
We have food on the table. We have amazing, celebrating. Find one thing to celebrate and give gratitude to every day. As cheesy as those gratitude journals are, I love them.
They're great. The other thing, just basics like getting 7 or more hours of sleep a night. I mean, to me, is key.
Basic needs.
Am I eating, hungry? I mean, and the other thing is, just being aware of what I'm putting in my body.
Yes.
Am I eating food and drinking drinks that are healthy for me, and am I building in some treats so I don't feel deprived?
Right.
Or am I like completely binging because I feel deprived, or that sort of thing. So just those kinds of things, and also my relationships and my work, I think are really key as far as being. If you're in relationships where you're not feeling respected, or you're not feeling appreciated, or you feel like people are just not meeting your needs, that's an opportunity to get the support you need to either ask for what you need or whether it's therapy or whatever.
Do you know Byron Katie?
I love Byron Katie.
Oh my gosh, turn it around. That's what I always say.
Yeah.
If you're not,
is that true?
If they're
Do you
not
know
meeting,
that's 100% that's true?
If they're not meeting your need, then maybe you're not meeting your need. I love that.
Yes.
That
Yes.
turnaround every time.
Yes.
I'm like, oh man.
Yeah.
Dang it.
Yeah. You can't get away with anything with Byron.
I got that in 2010. I had a great mentor who introduced me, and I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Personal growth at its finest. Thanks.
Okay, what else? I think the other thing that's really key is, EMDR is a good tool.
Because it's embodied as well. And for
eye movement desensitization.
And reprocessing.
Right.
So for those of you, and this is what inspired me to get into the field of doing psychology. For those of you who don't want to rehash your story because you've been to a million therapists, I had that experience, and you just want to get through and process this stuff, and you are a physical person, EMDR is a great tool. EMDR helps your brain rewire by activating your body, and it allows you to experience and transform and just retell your narrative, and it's
pretty simple. It's pretty quick, too, isn't it?
It's quick. It's like 3 to 6 sessions. And I think it's perfect for those of us who've been through so much therapy.
Yeah.
And I don't want to tell my story to one more person. You don't have to. If you know your narrative.
Yeah.
And it's challenging.
Right.
Because it requires you to get into your body. So if you have pre-verbal or sexual trauma, that embodiment is really challenging.
Right.
So, recognizing that you're going to a practitioner who knows how to recommend other treatments that can be done in parallel to really help you move through your healing process.
Okay.
Absolutely, I love EMDR.
The other thing I want to address is many women and men that are in midlife that didn't realize they had hyper-aroused brains, and so that they've been kind of swimming in this toxic stress, have autoimmune issues.
Absolutely.
And so, what can they do to heal?
So if we think about our nervous system, right? So if you think about you think about your nervous system, that is the thing that when it's down, then it causes you your immune system to go. All your other systems are down.
Right.
When you're stressed, your nervous system is down. Your immune system is down. So if you decrease your stress, your nervous system is going to be more regulated. Your immune system is going to be more regulated. Right. So so
you won't get sick, or if you are sick, it'll help you heal.
It'll help you heal.
So how do you stop the stress, though?
So how do you stop the stress? So recognizing when it's happening and what it looks like for you.
Okay.
If it looks like you are starting to check your phone 50 million times, if it looks like you are not going out with friends that you usually would go out with, if it looks like being manic, you're working out a lot or you're trying to clean everything in the house, it's either hyper or hypoarousal. Am I completely shutting down? It can look like depression.
It can look like you're totally tired, you can't get out of bed.
Yeah, it can look like depression. It can look like anxiety.
Okay.
Those are the two pieces. If you notice that you're having anxiety, your body's trying to tell you something. Your body's saying, hey, I'm stressed, something's going on, and you can shift into that place where, okay, I need to do some caring for myself. And self-care doesn't always have to be by yourself. It can be connecting with friends.
Right.
It can be connecting with nature, going to the beach.
Right.
It can be just being present on your drive home. That's self-care.
Okay, cool. Well, for me, I didn't realize, I've been on antidepressant for 20 years, and it was a miracle for me when I got on it because I was so anxious.
Right.
Literally within a couple of weeks, it was like, oh my God, I'm not totally obsessed about what's going to go wrong in my life for the first time. And according to the ACEs study too, something like people with 5 or more ACEs have 100% chance of being on an SSRI.
Yeah.
I mean, most of us are on something.
Well, that's the treatment. If you go to a psychiatrist, that's what they do. They don't prescribe therapy or something.
Right. So, I mean, it did help me because I didn't know that my anxiety was a result of this brain thing. What was I going to say? So what I'm saying though is so
It helps stabilize you, right?
So it helped stabilize me, but my body was still hyper aroused, and I ended up with a peripheral neuropathy thing in my feet.
Yeah.
And what I know, and I had no idea it was related to ACEs.
Yeah.
But what I would notice is that when I was in certain environments with certain people, they would act up more.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I know that people that have fibromyalgia and some other autoimmune issues, a lot of times stress is a trigger.
Well, stress is what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Stress turns it on. It's like a light switch. Like, oh, you're stressed? Okay, then these are the symptoms you can expect to see. And I think that
so this is perfect that we're talking about this. So this is the barometer.
Yeah, the symptoms you should expect to see if your body is in a stressed state are that of autoimmune disorders, or that, and that was my aha moment when he made that connection in the ACE study in that first training. You mean you're telling me that these symptoms are explainable based on
that's what a body does.
Trauma. That's what your body's supposed to do, and it just stays turned on, or it gets turned on in these situations where we're stressed as adults.
The stress
exacerbates it.
Yeah, it's basically a hyper aroused brain. So you're always
your nervous system.
Your nervous system gets parked in hyper arousal because that's what you had to be in when you were a child, and it doesn't.
Or numbing and disassociation.
Right.
And so those are the kind of two ends of the spectrum.
And so what happened for me is that I would go into, so I got on the meds and everything, but then I would get really tired. Well, I realized recently part of that stress cycle is that you get so depleted that you get exhausted.
Yeah.
Right. And then I started drinking all this caffeine.
It's exhausting being having that activated.
So then I start doing all this caffeine.
Yeah.
Which is the worst thing I could be doing, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
You know?
It keeps you going.
Yeah, so now I understand it.
Yeah.
It's such a gift to understand what really is going on.
It's just understanding, and that's where we have to start with all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad your viewers are getting the exposure to the ACE study and recognizing all of these components. Yes. And I know that everybody wants to talk about what to do and where to go. I encourage you to just take a moment and just let this stuff sink in. You're not crazy. There's nothing wrong with you. We're all in this together. Our bodies are responding to the stressors that are abnormal. Yeah. These are abnormal stressors that we are experiencing.
That we are exposed to,
here's these abnormal outcomes that our bodies are responding.
And one, I know we need to wrap up, but one last thing I just want to mention is what I found in my life is that we tend to feel comfortable in energetic environments that we're used to.
That are familiar, absolutely.
Even if they're not good for us. So people or situations or jobs or whatever. And so when you start doing your own work on this, just be aware of the kinds of situations that are not healthy for you.
And that's perfect language. Is it helpful? Is it not helpful?
Yeah.
Because we don't want to move into a space of judgment.
Right.
If it's bad or good.
Right.
Because it was really good for you at one point, and now it's not helpful. And that's okay.
Right.
We don't need to, it's okay if we have to set boundaries. That's part of healthy healing.
Yeah. Oh, there's Dana. Hi, Dana. Good to see you. Thank you for being here. That's Dana Brown. She's actually going to be on in 2 more weeks. I'm going to mention that. Well, okay, before we let you go, though, how can people work with you and how can they reach you?
So I do trainings. I have a Resilience Champion training program that is online. It's 6 weeks. So if this stuff is inspiring to you and you want to learn more about how to integrate it into your life, whether it's professionally or personally, then I encourage you to check out my website, originstraining.org. I am a therapist at Roots and Wings in Malibu. So if you're looking for therapeutic services, you can reach out to me on my phone number or my email through the Origin site. And I encourage everybody to become a member of ACES Connection, of course.
Yes. Which is
a website that helps build resilience and shine spotlights on pockets of greatness, as Dana says, in our community here in Los Angeles or all around the nation. So if you're into this and you want to start, learning more or advocating more.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, just this is like the most urgent public health
It
crisis.
is, absolutely.
People,
it is a public health crisis.
It's a public health crisis.
And it's a social justice issue.
Yes, and so that's 100%. What we're up to. And that's why I became the community manager of the Orange County ACEs Connection community, because I really want to help people in my local community as well. So with that, thank you so much, Andy. This is so awesome.
Great. Absolutely.
Yay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye,
everybody. I hope to connect with you.
Okay. So I got a couple of announcements, and I'm going to wrap it up. Wow, that was so awesome. Wow. Loved having that chat with Andy. Again, for people that might have shown up late, if you want to take the ACEs survey, all you need to do is go right up to the Mary Giuliani Watch Live, not the Watch Live, the marygiuliani.net, and there's an Adverse Childhood Experiences Survey tab right at the top of my website. So you can take the survey as well as the Resilience Survey. And there's some more content on that page about what ACEs are, and also I want to encourage you to go to my favorite books and authors tab on my website, because all of the books that have really made a profound difference in my life and the teachers are all listed there. So you can get a lot of support in, I've heard it called bibliotherapy. Anyway, my coaching tip. So I'm a life coach, and my tip tonight is about, of course, the ACEs topic. And so basically my challenge for you is to look at, once you take your ACEs survey and look at your scores, what's one step you're willing to take toward getting the support you need to move in a healthier direction? A lot of us have been doing work on ourselves for years, but maybe there's one extra thing you can do. And go to the acesconnections.com website or Andy's website to get the support you need and the education you need to really live your best life and help other people do it as well. And as a coach, I love working with women in midlife that are, at a place where they've probably spent most of their lives helping other people achieve their goals and help other people heal, but maybe they haven't really taken the time to get in touch with what they really want for their lives and what their soul's calling is. So if you're a woman that is at a place where you really are ready to take it to the next level and make sure that you get your purpose out there and do what you feel called to do in the world before it's too late, please go up to my website and go to the coaching tab, and I'd be glad to chat with you about that. And let's see, the last thing I always like to say is what's one thing you can do to be true to yourself? And with that, have a great week. And next, in 2 weeks, we've got Dana Brown. Now, Dana, excuse me for looking here, but I have to read this. She's the Southern California Regional Community Facilitator for ACEs Connection Network. And the topic we're going to be discussing is how you can support youth and teens with high ACE scores to become more resilient and heal and grow to create bright, meaningful future. Dana is an amazing woman that has just been a social justice advocate for the ACEs community and has done some amazing things. So I can't wait to have Dana here in 2 weeks. That's going to be on the 28th. And with that, let's see you in 2 weeks. And thanks so much for being here. Have a great week, everybody.